I originally wanted to be a feature filmmaker, and I ended up going in 1971 to Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts, and all the film and photography teachers, and they taught film and photography together, were social documentary still photographers, and film was merely an afterthought for most of them. And so I really had my molecules rearranged and were taught by great photojournalists and social documentary still photographers promoting a humanistic tradition, and I brought that into my work as a filmmaker. I abandoned the Hollywood route, but have been trying to bring a kind of value of entertainment and storytelling to the documentaries that I've made, but in a way in which the still photograph is the DNA, the basic building block of what we're doing. And at the heart of the work is a healthy respect for the power of individual images to convey complex information without undue manipulation. That's been the heart of what we've been, trusting that a great deal of information can come out of an image. That's why we move in and we don't hold them at arm's length. We get inside and try to resurrect the moment in which they were taken. So in the war, it's filled with sound and complicated sound effects track or music or appropriate voice that I think helps will this moment alive. The Ken Burns effect is something that if you have a Mac computer, it's a feature that's on there, and so we don't want to talk too much about the Ken Burns effect because it's like the tail wagging the dog and not the other way around. This was something developed in respect for an approach I took to still photographs, and Steve Jobs and the folks at Apple had spent some time perfecting it, and when they did, put it on the computers and asked my permission to say Ken Burns effect. Now what they're responding to is that for the last 35 years I have been unsatisfied with the notion that a still photograph is something you just pin up on the wall and hold at arm's length like a slideshow. That I, using those old roots of a feature filmmaker, wanted to get inside that image, and so I treat it like a feature film director who has a long shot with the possibility of a medium shot, a close shot, an extreme close-up, a pan, a tilt, a reveal, all the different elements at the disposal of a feature filmmaker I bring to bear into the photograph. Now, that to me is more an energy than it is a technique. That is to say, we want to energetically explore the landscape of a still photograph and tell stories within those still photographs, and that's what I've done. Now if that's the Ken Burns effect and it's now been sort of reduced to a button you can push or a mouse you can click that permits you to take it, download your photographs and to zoom and pan through them to make your little wedding stories. I mean that's okay, but at the heart of my interest was to try to get inside a photograph and resurrect the time in which it was taken and trust that that may be the closest representation we have to the past. The fundamental use of a still photograph is usually in isolation so that the viewer himself has the opportunity to determine the length of time you spend looking at it. So when you're getting into telling stories with pictures, you're getting close to film and you're beginning to realize that at the heart of a film is a still image. There aren't any rules because at the heart of this compact between the photographer and his subject is the essence of seeing, and each individual circumstance has a different demand of seeing. So you're going to cover a wedding on Thursday different than you'd cover a wedding on Saturday, and you're going to cover a wedding quite differently than you're going to cover a funeral. And it gets a lot subtler than weddings and funerals because life is incredibly complicated. So at the heart of our enterprise is a kind of an awareness and a self-discipline and an interest in understanding what are the natural and authentic stories and how you can get out of the way of them in presenting them, and those that you have to superimpose. I mean, that's what a filmmaker does, or a photographer does, is put a frame around a moment and make it happen.